I am continuing my zodiac series. So for today's video, we are going to be talking about Sagittarius on a karmic and thematic level. Before we get into it, like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I greatly appreciate all of the support so much. I have my website in the description if you would like to book a reading with me. I also have an email list going, so if you sign up for that, you will receive exclusive promotions, discounts, and astrological insights. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm very passionate about the sign Sagittarius because I feel as though there are a lot of misconceptions about the sign. Basically, I think Sagittarius sometimes gets kind of clouded by the fact that it is Jupiter ruled, and Jupiter is perceived as like this really lucky planet. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of luck and abundance and opportunity, which I think is the fitting word here, opportunity. I think there's a lot of opportunity that comes with Jupiter, but I do know that there is a raging storm on Jupiter, and I think that storminess is not always taken into account when talking about Sagittarius thematically and karmically. Now, I do want you to know that this is for anyone with really prominent Sagittarius energy, not just Sag Sun, but Sag Ascendant, Sag Moon, that's another big one, Sag Mars, that's another really big one, Sag Venus, even Sag Mercury, okay? Anyone with a really prominent Sagittarius placement or, again, Ascendant. All right, let's get into it. So I want to start with childhood. So childhood for people with prominent Sagittarius energy, it tends to be really complicated. So Sagittarius, as we all know, is associated with travel, adventure, exploration, education. Now, the need to travel, the need to explore, the need to learn, this usually stems from some type of absence or negligence in the home. What people with Sagittarius energy are really seeking is home. That's what they're seeking. They're seeking a place of belonging. They're seeking a place of identity. They're seeking a place of assurance, validation of, this makes sense. This feels good. This feels comfortable. This is where I belong. That's really what Sagittarius people are seeking. And they do this through pursuing education. They do it through wandering, through traveling. They do it through all these different ways. They're seeking something that is not always related to what they consciously think they are looking for, which is adventure, exploration. Those are the things that they can consciously say, yes, I'm seeking out these wild and, crazy opportunities. But what they're really seeking out is a sense of belonging and home. So in childhood, it's not uncommon for people with prominent Sag energy to grow up in households where there is some type of absence, neglect, disconnect in the home. This could be a disconnect between them and a parent. It could be that they feel like they're the black sheep of the family, or maybe they feel like the scapegoat. And Sagittarius, because it rules over things that are different from us, it's also not uncommon karmically for people with prominent Sag placements to grow up in a home with people who are not biologically related to them. So this could note growing up with step siblings, growing up with step parents, and this is really complicated. So when I was in school, I took a really interesting class called evolutionary psychology. And the reason why this class was so interesting is it did break down the dynamics of what it is like growing up in a house with people who are not related to you. In this particular case, I'm talking about step siblings and step parents. I grew up in a home with a step parent and step siblings, okay? And I can confidently say it is not always easy. And taking that evolutionary psychology class taught me a lot about, on a biological level, how kids respond to having people in the home who are not related to them. For women, it can kickstart puberty earlier if they have like a stepdad. I'm not kidding, that is something that I learned. If there is a young girl in the house and there is a non-biologically related man in that house, an older man, even if it's like an older stepbrother, that can kickstart that girl's puberty. So there's a lot of really interesting, weird stuff that can come from living with people not related to you. And I feel like this really applies to people with prominent Sag energy. So basically, you can grow up in a very odd home environment where maybe your development is accelerated or it is wonky as a result of who you are living with. Now, another way this can manifest in very extreme cases, again, because Sag rules over things not related to us, is being adopted, growing up in a home where your parents are, where you're adopted, or you have an adopted sibling, or your parents like to foster children. Another way being like growing up with like a friend, like living with a friend, or living with people that are not your parents but are still related to you, like a grandparent, for example. And this can also note moving around a lot in youth. That's another way that your sense of familiarity, comfort, and stability can be kind of taken from you, is being forced to travel a lot in youth, going from school to school, growing up in a military home. Like, those are other ways where that kind of foreign energy can manifest in the home of people with prominent Sag energy. It's not uncommon, similar with Scorpio, Sag and Scorpio neighbor, they have some things in common, to grow up in a home and you are exposed to a very profound loss at a young age, the death of a parent, the death of just a family member. You know, there's a spiritual crisis that tends to take place for young Sagittarius children. This spiritual crisis being, you know, maybe you grow up in a home where religion is heavily pushed upon you, or certain spiritual faiths and ideologies are pushed upon you, but then there's some type of crisis or tragedy that makes you question the validity of that practice, of that faith, of that religion, whatever the case may be. This is why Sagittarius is also so heavily associated with religion and spirituality, similar to Pisces. There's usually some type of spiritual crisis that takes place in youth, that for that Sagittarius child, it really kind of throws them for a loop, and it can shatter what they have come to believe in, basically. So in adulthood, this is why Sagittarius people, they're very philosophical, they're wanderers, they're always seeking truth, they're truth seekers. And this is in part, again, in youth, their ideologies that they were brought up with, even if they were projected upon them by the people in the home or their teachers, whatever, it can again be kind of taken from them due to some type of tragedy or crisis. It's not uncommon for people with prominent Sag to grow up in a home with addicts as well, people who are just generally very unstable. Now, in adulthood, all of that confusion, that negligence, and in dealing with negligence too, I kind of forgot to touch on this. This can also note having a parent abandon that Sag child, not necessarily through a death, but through straight up walking out, I don't want to be a parent anymore, goodbye. A parent moving very far away from that child, like if your parents divorce and then one, maybe your dad moves very far away across the country or something, and you never really get to see them. That's another way it can manifest. But in adulthood, that deep, profound sense of spiritual loss, that sense of, parental loss, absence, negligence, that can really follow that Sagittarius influenced individual. So ways that this can manifest in adulthood, for some people with prominent Sag, this can lead to very reckless antics. So Sagittarius, in being associated with abundance and fortune, they can be very gambly, okay? They're the gamblers of the zodiac. They take a lot of risks, they like to have fun, and there is almost this insatiable, indulgent energy to them. It's not uncommon, and Sagittarius, in terms of like body type, the ideal, stereotypical body of the Sag is pretty big. It's tall, it's thick, it has, it's wide hips, it's large chest, large bum, thick thighs, it's a bigger build. And that fullness kind of reflects itself in their actions and in their daily life and in their consumption habits. So Sagittarius people, they like to spend money, they like to eat a lot, they like to play with their money, they like to gamble, they like to experiment, they like to drink, they like to take substances. You would have to have a lot of other stuff going on in your chart to negate the weight of that kind of indulgence and playfulness that comes with prominent Sag energy. Hang on, sorry, my cat. Come on, pick a spot. Pick a spot. All right, I give up with you. If anyone has cats, you know what is happening right now. He's being very stubborn. I give up. But you'd have to have other stuff going on to negate that. So Sagittarius in adulthood, and this can really happen in their like late teens, young adulthood. This isn't necessarily a forever condition, but they can go play. They like to play. And this ties into this sense of kind of nihilism that people with prominent Sag can struggle with. Again, there's a spiritual loss in youth. So growing up, people with prominent Sag can go through really dark depressions. And this is brought on again by like this sense of what is going on. Is this meaningless? What am I feeling right now? What is this all about? Who's in charge of all of this? In their quest for knowledge, there's a lot of, peaks and dips in their spiritual practice and in their faith as a whole. So they can go through periods of nihilism. And in very extreme cases, those nihilistic thoughts and feelings can take over. So in an unfavorable expression, Sagittarius energy can be that nihilism can drive them to abandon morals, basically. This is not everybody with prominent Sag. This isn't even most people. Okay, so I don't want you to, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to freak you out. These are like extreme case scenarios of Sagittarius really gone wrong, which is an abandonment of morals because of that nihilism. Now, in a favorable expression, you have the more, kind of righteous Sagittarius, not in a negative way or anything, but the Sagittarius that really cares about community, social engagement, social involvement. So it usually takes some hermit, lifestyle habits to kind of get to that place of community and togetherness, but in an evolved expression, yes, you can get there. So Sagittarius people, in being so about education and their quest for knowledge, they can go through hermit periods where they isolate, they withdraw, they kind of self-contain. They're the philosophers and they're the seekers and the wanderers. These are the people that go on solo trips. These are the people that take a hiatus from college and they go backpacking across Asia. They're not afraid to dive deep within their own psyche and their own subconscious and get to the truth and the heart of their own existence and being. And that can lead them to reclaiming their sense of spirituality. That can lead them to rediscovering their faith. That can lead them to really claiming their optimism. So in a very favorable expression, this constant quest, this constant seeking of, information about what's going on in a higher sense, like in a more spiritual sense, Sagittarius can really latch on to optimism and faith. And this is where that abundance really comes into play. Sagittarius is like a cat with 9 lives. They are resilient. They're like the cockroaches that have just somehow can survive a nuclear explosion and no one really understands why or how, but their exoskeleton is just like super strong. Like Sagittarius is the cockroach of the zodiac. They can live through it all. They tend to live very long lives as a result. They're like the wise old sage, you know what I mean? Like all that quest, all those quests, all that seeking, it extends them. It gives them purpose to be alive. Even if their purpose isn't always going to look the same as maybe some of the other more like material driven signs, Sagittarius isn't completely concerned with the material. They're similar to Pisces in that way. They're higher. They're about higher ideals. They're much more about, philosophy, spirituality, religion, culture, community. They're not thinking too much about money, job, work, like that's not really on their radar. You can of course have some that are like that, especially if they have heavy Cap influence, but at the end of the day, they recognize that their purpose doesn't really lie in the rat race. You know what I mean? They're trying to liberate and free themselves from that. And their sense of optimism can definitely help. People with prominent Sag can really pave their own way through life. They can march to the beat of their own drum. Now, I will say a lot of them can excel academically. School being such a prominent feature on a karmic level, this can have a lot of different expressions. So for some, like I said, this is like dropping out of school or, taking a hiatus to go travel, to go figure yourself out, being an entrepreneur. That's one way that kind of scholastic education or scholastic energy can manifest. Another one is academic excellence, having multiple degrees, getting your PhD, taking your education as far as you can possibly take it, and excelling on an academic level, getting scholarships. That's another great thing about prominent Sag energy. They are more likely to be on the receiving end of grants, scholarships, loans, any type of, gift or kind of like extension that allows them to progress in life and advance. So that's a great, blessing with prominent Sag energy. On a financial level, you can just be given money. You're not always going to be given money that you necessarily have to actively work for, similar to Scorpio. This is in part why Sag is a bit of a gambler. They can gamble and make a lot of money back, and it's like you're not really doing very much except playing poker. And I'm not saying playing poker doesn't require skill, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like a lot of it is luck, right? That's where that luck comes into play. Now, that optimistic nature of Sagittarius can really help them, especially on a social level. Like these are people that have friends in all different places of the entire world. Like there's an outreach energy to them. There's a global energy to them. There's a strong cultural expression to people with prominent Sag energy. So they know how to connect to all different types of life. And that's in part because of how curious they are. They love relationships with people who are different from them because it gives them something to learn. These are people that will have friends, even if they don't always agree or see eye to eye with like a certain type of person, whatever. They're still going to keep them around, even if they have to maintain like a boundary or a point of distance, whatever the case may be. There's still value to that relationship. Sagittarius, they get the things that are valuable to them are things that are foreign to them, things that are new to them, things that are different, things that they don't have a good grasp on, because again, they are driven by education. They're driven by their knowledge to understand. They're driven by their curiosity, their need to seek out, truth, whatever that might mean. But their optimistic nature and being so connected, like on like a global scale, they can have a lot of doors open for them by other people. Like their social connections can take them very far in life. They're schmoozers, they're charmers, they can be flirty when they need to be. Like these people could sell anything to anybody. You know what I mean? Like they're also kind of similar to Gemini, like the salespeople of the zodiac. Like they are the schmoozers and charmers. That is why when gone wrong, Sagittarius, in a very unevolved expression, can be bad, like criminal bad. They can be a thief, they can be a crook, they can be a con artist, like they're like the pirates of the zodiac too. In an unfavorable expression, they can be really, really bad. And they're not all like that, I promise. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're diabolical, essentially. But that optimism and that social connection can lead them to so many different places. And these are the people too that can like call into the radio contest and win a free stay in a 5-star resort for a week. Like these are the people that they throw their hat in the race, and that alone like gives them a leg up. Like I don't even know how to explain it. These people just try. They meet the universe halfway. They know that luck is something that you have to like actively meet halfway. You can't like sit at home and just blah and expect things to come to you or happen for you. They go outside. Okay, Sagittarius people, they go outside, they go into the world. They explore. I know I keep using that word, but that really is what they're doing. They go out and they take a chance. They understand that in order to communicate with the universe, in order to, be with the universe, you have to meet the universe halfway. The universe can't do all the work. That's not how it works. Don't get me wrong, divine timing is very real. Sometimes things do just find you, but I promise you the reason why your Sagittarius friend, despite maybe being a bit of a mess, they lose their keys, they lose their ID, they are late for everything, despite these, flaws, there's a reason why they are always traveling. There's a reason why they are starting their own business or excelling in school, or they got the promotion even when they're not really working that hard. It's because they show up. It's because they do show up to meet life halfway. They join the bike club even though they've never ridden a bike in their life. They go to the new opening of the art gallery even though art is like, maybe they don't know much about it, but they're curious. And that's the other thing too, is they show up in their community. Community is so important for Sagittarius. Remember, so much of what they're doing when they're exploring is seeking home. So they tend to live in a lot of different places throughout their lifetime. Some of them even live abroad, like they will start out in one country and then go to a different country, or they travel across the world and they set their roots down in a completely different place from where they started in life. But community is important, so when they move to a new environment, they do try to get involved. That's the other thing that helps them remain receptive and open to new opportunities and chances and lucky happenstances. Like that is just what they do. But at the end of the day, despite all of that goodness, a lot of people with prominent Sagittarius energy, they do kind of have like a void within them. They're not always the most, it's not that they're not emotional, but again, they deal in like higher ideals and philosophy and psychology and spirituality and religion and culture. And on an emotional level, similar to Gemini, they can kind of overthink their feelings in a way. They try to analyze them and break them down, and sometimes they, sometimes they can kind of assume like, oh, I'm feeling this way, so if I just do this thing, they can actually be really solution oriented. So they might point their arrow, the archer, point their arrow at a sight and let it go, and they think that that's gonna make themselves feel better. But it's like, you gotta go to therapy for that. You know what I'm saying? You gotta like do some deep emotional work. And sometimes they can stay so busy, or they always have something going on their agenda, that they neglect the emotional, they neglect the fact that, well, you actually do have to kind of tend to your emotions and think and sit with them. But there, a lot of the times, certain people with prominent Sag, they're so busy that they overlook the importance of tending to their own emotional wellness. And instead they can just kind of fill that hole with like stuff that they're doing. Like, oh, I'm going on vacation next week. Fill the hole. Oh, I'm meeting of someone I met online. I'm going to meet them for the first time. Fill the hole. Oh, I got a promotion. Fill the hole. Like all of these other things filling the hole, basically. But not just like tending to their emotions. And for people with prominent Sagittarius energy, tend to your attachment issues and tend to your abandonment issues, because those are the things that are very much driving a lot of their decisions, whether they actively realize this or not. Okay, that's like everything I can immediately think. There is a lot more to be said about Sagittarius. I feel like that is the main gist of it. I feel like this was also kind of all over the place. So I am nervous to keep talking because I feel like I'm a little spastic today, but I hope that made sense. Let me know in the comments if it did, or if you know someone with Sagittarius energy. I hope this gave you good insight. Like and subscribe. Don't forget to do that. And again, I have my website in the description if you'd like to book a reading. Sign up for my email list. And thank you so much for all of the continued support. Mwah, mwah, mwah.